Welcome to the LA City Championship football video. Connor Morrison and Alex Garr. Alex, we made it all the way from August to now. We're into the championships. Open D1, 2, and 3. The best teams have advanced. It's a very exciting time.
Yeah, thank you all for watching from the very beginning up to now. We've come to the Hill a couple of times. We've done some backyard videos. We've talked to a bunch of different coaches, players, and it's all led up to this moment. We've talked to a ton of guys, and some of the teams that we thought would be in these championship games, sure enough, here they are. Also have a couple of surprises.
Yes, certainly.
A couple of teams that kind of came out of nowhere, shocked us, shocked the city section. I can't wait to see how it all pans out.
Let's start in the open division, where Birmingham kept it relatively close with Narbonne, probably about as close as any city team could have, and they lose 63-23, but I don't know if any other team could have kept it that close, so I want to give them some credit. And like I said on Twitter, that was the most points Narbonne has allowed to a city team since they allowed 34 to Dorsey back in the 2016 championship game. So even that great Crenshaw team last year wasn't able to score that many on Narbonne. Birmingham deserves credit, but Narbonne rolls, and it's that offense. Garcia and Henderson were both really, really efficient in that game, and Narbonne advances to another championship.
Yeah, we kind of saw this one coming. I mean, we knew Birmingham, if any team could give them at least a couple of solid punches, it'd be Birmingham, maybe a San Fernando. Birmingham comes out of the semifinal game getting themselves, they get out of that quarterfinal game, getting into the semifinals there against Narbonne, and kind of proving, like you mentioned, I mean, they are one of the toughest teams here in the city. I think if there really ought to be a 1 through 10 matchup, if you were going to rank all these teams from scratch without taking into account the Cal Preps, I'd probably put Birmingham at number 2.
Oh, certainly.
And I think they deserve that spot right there to at least show, hey, we can score a couple of touchdowns against Narbonne. We're not going to get rolled. Now, as you mentioned, Narbonne just kind of did their Narbonne thing. Jake Garcia, 20 of 23, 307 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, and also rushed for a touchdown.
Yeah, ran for one too.
So, I mean, this team's really going to be really, really difficult to stop. Jalen Henderson, that sophomore quarterback who got the start, kind of came into his own throughout the season, had a really nice capping finish here. 10 of 11, 151 yards, and a touchdown. They also rushed for 6 touchdowns on the ground. Marcisietz had a pair, Jack Brown had a pair, and Jawan Collins also had a touchdown. So they're just really doing everything they need to do. This team's going to be a really difficult team to beat, and as we're going to talk about in a second, they get Garfield next. I don't think Garfield gives them the kind of test that Birmingham just did.
I agree with you, and we'll get into Garfield in a second. One other Narbonne player I want to shout out, Aaron East had a good game, caught a touchdown, and was over 100 yards. But Garfield, I was at that game, 24-21, they beat Eagle Rock, and the takeaway from that one is we definitely underestimated Garfield a little bit. They deserved to win that game. They were losing in the second half, but you could kind of tell that they were going to pull it out because at the end of that game, Eagle Rock's offense could not move the ball, and Garfield was moving it well. A few turnovers from Garfield happened, and so they shot themselves in the foot a couple times, but that defense was dominant, and that defense won them that game. And then on offense, John Batista's ability to pass the ball, we were wondering, we know Garcia's a great running back. He struggled a bit in this game, but Batista throwing to Angel Hidalgo, that was the big difference in this game. Hidalgo was over 100 yards, and every time they needed a big play, whether it was on offense or defense, it seemed like he made it. But the defense of Garfield was so impressive, and they got the win.
Yeah, we had 2 big questions about this Garfield Bulldog team. Can they pass the ball effectively against a team that stops the run, and what's that defense going to be like? We weren't sure. They hadn't played an offense quite as fast, quite as good as Eagle Rock, but they really showed up. 9 team sacks there for Garfield. Yeah. Anthony Ruvalcaba had 4 on his own. So this team, we talked about, maybe not quite talked them down, but we certainly asked a little bit extra of them to say, hey, we don't know what this kind of defense has. You haven't played a lot of tough offensive teams. They went out, the best offense they have seen all season, and they shut them down. Only 21 points. We've seen Eagle Rock put up 40 and 50 against a lot of the teams that they play. So shout out to Garfield. Undefeated season on the line here. I mean, they've had a fantastic run. They're 12-0. Obviously, Narbonne's going to be the biggest test for them, but this is a really, really good Bulldog team, and that offense kind of surprised me. Defense surprised me even more.
Yeah, the defense was great. One other point, the Garfield crowd was awesome. Garfield traveled really well up there to Eagle Rock. The previous game before, Palisades, didn't travel as well, and Garfield, they filled the stands. That it was overflooded or overcrowded, I should say, onto the sideline a little bit. Wow. People were standing around, and Eagle Rock brought a lot of people, so it was just a really great environment, so that was cool to see. And I think we're going to see that on Friday night against Narbonne, and I think we both know what we expect from that game, but at least the crowd will be great, and maybe with the crowd behind him, Garfield can keep it close early. I don't think either of us believe that that's going to happen, but we should get a good atmosphere at least.
Yeah, well, here's the thing for Garfield. Yeah, you might lose to Narbonne. That's the best team in the city section.
You're going to play another
We've
game.
talked about it, but you're guaranteed another game. So all of these fans, they're going to go travel. Hey, if you catch an upset, it's going to be one of the best football games you've ever seen. But the fact is, you're going to get to watch your boys go on and play again in a state bowl game. So that's a huge thing for the program. Garfield hasn't been in this position in a long time, so huge ups to the Bulldogs no matter what happens.
Yeah, and I asked Coach Hernandez after the game, did you think at the beginning of the year this was an open division championship team? And he said, no, if you saw us at passing league, you would have laughed at us. But every week we've gotten better, and we deserve to be here. And I agree. The rankings are kind of weird sometimes. You play against who you play against, and Garfield maybe got a little bit fortunate playing Carson when they were down and then getting Eagle Rock in the second round. But, hey, they made it here, and we got to throw all the other excuses out the window. They're playing Narbonne in the Open Division Championship. They haven't lost a game all year. I think they deserve to be here. Yeah,
another cliche, it's not who you play, it's when you play them, right? I mean, they got Carson in the first round. We talked at length about how good of a Carson team would be if they had all of their guys playing, but it doesn't matter. You got to win the game you're in. They took out Carson, then they played Eagle Rock, beat them too, and now they're in a championship game. And that's huge for the program. We keep talking at length about how much some of these other teams we thought might have been a little bit better. Doesn't matter. You get put in a spot, you just got to win the game you're in. Garfield doing a great job.
Yeah, so Carson feels slighted, Birmingham feels slighted, San Fernando feels slighted, but if this is how the city is going to do it, this is what's going to happen. Look at last year. San Fernando should have been in the Open Division, and they end up winning Division I, so that was kind of a good screw job, if you want to say that, whereas this year, some other teams, they got kind of screwed differently, and that's kind of how it goes. Maybe that's not the most appropriate word choice right there, but if the computer's going to do this, stuff like this is going to happen each and every year. Some teams are going to get a little fortunate, others aren't, and you just gotta go with what happens.
Yeah, you stick around long enough, you're going to see your team go through some lulls, you're going to get screwed by the computer, and then, you're going to come up and get some fortunate things happening for you. So it's all kind of cyclical. I know these teams, they're bummed about it, but they're going to get another shot next year. It's just going to continue to cycle out.
We'll talk about the Open Division Championship in a little bit in our predictions, but let's move on to Division I. So, Alex, you were at Dorsey. They beat Fairfax by a score of 34-16. Don't look now, but Dorsey has won 8 games in a row, clicking at the absolute right time. What did you see in that one?
Well, Dorsey, I picked them in my Division I bracket to win the whole thing, and they didn't disappoint me at all. Fairfax is a good team. We talked about how they got a really good passing attack, got a great linebacker, got a good running back. Didn't really see a whole lot out of any of those guys. Okay. Dorsey did a really, really good job. They won 34-16, as you mentioned, and they just jumped on the board early. Michael Sanford and Keyshawn Johnson had a couple early scores. They each got a later score, so they ended up with 4 total between them. And the big thing, that Dorsey defense. They held Scott Harris to just 89 yards passing on 8 of 13. Jordan Reed, that great running back who we've seen go for over 200 yards in a game, he was held to just 85 yards on 22 carries. The big guy we got to shout out, Tyler Morrison, defensive end, 3-4 edge rusher, linebacker. Kid is humongous. He had one of the best hits I've ever seen in that game. So he's a watch name for our all-city team. The kid's an absolute monster. Dorsey looking really, really good. They never throw the ball like a lot of these teams, and that can be a problem, but they've got a couple of really, really good running backs, and they're going to give San Pedro a huge test.
Dorsey will have revenge on its mind. Last year, they fell in the D1 championship to San Fernando, so for them to get back there and maybe win one this year after what happened last year, that's a great story. You mentioned it, though, Alex. They'll get number 6, San Pedro, who beat number 10, Southgate, 44-14. Southgate was actually up 7-0 in this game, but then San Pedro turned it on.
Not for long.
It was all about Joshua Ward, who had a school record, 268 rushing yards in a playoff game. That's the record, and then 5 touchdowns. It was the Joshua Ward show that night. We've talked about some other guys in San Pedro, but he stole the show and is the player of the game for sure.
Yeah, they really put this one away in the second quarter. As you mentioned, Josh Ward went for 268, 5 TDs. He had 3 of them in the second quarter. When a team gets up on you like that, they were up, I think, 28-7 at halftime. You don't want to say you're folding, but you kind of know one team is just a little bit better. They brought it today. San Pedro, they got a great draw. I think they were underrated here in the 6th seed in that Division I playoffs. They got a great draw, and they just kept winning every single game, methodically moving through here these playoffs. Now they get Dorsey. We'll get to our pick in a little bit. Justin Bernal is going to be a really tough quarterback for that Dorsey defense. And Josh Ward. We're talking a ton about Cam Thomas. Haven't mentioned a whole lot of Josh Ward. It seems like they have a ton of playmakers that are going to give Dorsey a lot of problems.
Into Division II, Roosevelt against Locke in the championship. What?
Totally saw that coming, right?
Not what we predicted. I said Roosevelt will get upset in the first round. Look at me. I'm
Whoops.
an idiot. All right. So Locke, 26, Franklin 14. We thought the Franklin offense was going to be humming and give Locke a lot of trouble. Nope, Locke moves on. And I want to shout out a couple guys on Locke because we really haven't given them the credit they deserve this year.
Absolutely.
So Trayvon Ford was a running back for them. He had a touchdown in this game. Jaquez Harvey, listed as a defensive end on Max Preps. He was a tight end in this game for a little bit. He caught a touchdown.
Bigger than everybody else.
Yeah, very big kid. From Mikel Beamey, the quarterback. Jonathan Polanco had a huge pass breakup on a late red zone chance for Franklin. And then Beamey, like I said earlier, he sealed the game with a rushing touchdown. So those are some key guys for Locke. Good for them. We didn't really expect this at all because we thought the Franklin offense was so good with Bobadilla, and Locke goes into Franklin, and it was close for a while in this game, but then Beamey gets that big touchdown at the end to ice it, and they win by 2 scores.
Yeah, how about a 14-0 lead for Franklin early in this game? Locke had to come all the way back, and if you're facing a good team, especially a team when you're doubted out against, kind of be easy to fold up and just kind of take it home. But Locke stuck with it, as you shouted out Michael Beamey. He had that clinching TD with just a minute to go, winning that game for the Locke Saints. Now they get to play for a city title in Division II. That is so much fun for all these kids, all these seniors, a Locke football program that probably gets overlooked in just about everything except soccer. This is a great job for this team, and I'm really excited for them.
Yeah, and just to come to our defense for a second, looking at how they performed in the Coliseum League, tough games against Crenshaw and Dorsey.
You wouldn't have picked them.
It wasn't really expected, but then we see this sometimes. Looking at a team like Chatsworth, who really struggled in the West Valley League, they go all the way to the semifinals in Division III. And once you start playing teams who are more your level, you can pull off some big wins, and I bet those games really helped Locke get to where they are, going up against some of the best competition in the city.
Yeah, we talk about the good league play. We were wondering if Gardena could upset early in that round. We're talking about San Pedro playing a really tough Marine League schedule. So when you play a really tough league schedule, as they did in the Coliseum League here for Locke, as you mentioned, it just really prepares you for some of these teams that maybe they didn't play a really tough league. Maybe they had to, they shut out 3 teams in a row because the league just wasn't really full of a lot of good football players. So Locke really got tested.
And I think we can definitively say this now. The Eastern League, Garfield and Roosevelt are into championship games, has a big check mark over that Northern League because Eagle Rock is out, Franklin is out, Wilson is out. If you had asked me a few weeks before the playoffs, I'd say Eagle Rock and Franklin and Wilson are probably better than a lot of these teams in their divisions, but that's not how it's shaken out. And I love that we're able to say that. We can project. We do a lot of projecting on this show.
Wrong.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
And what happens, it all kind of works itself out, and that's what we've seen this year. We thought both those leagues weren't fantastic, but it ends up being that the Eastern League reigns supreme against some of the non-traditional powerhouses, if you will.
Yeah, it shows you how much we know, right? I mean, we thought it'd be a Franklin-Wilson final here, and both of these teams.
Yeah, I had Canoga Park, thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
Still,
Well,
are they here? No.
Yeah, no, exactly. We got Roosevelt and Garfield, as you mentioned, both these Eastern League teams respecting their league, going into different championship games, and we talk about that Roosevelt-Canoga Park game. Let's get to that. Roosevelt 17-14 win over Canoga Park, 7-7 at half, and Canoga did a pretty good job limiting Roosevelt's offense. Roosevelt scored 26 points against Wilson the week before, and we thought Wilson, or at least I did, would be their representative in that final game. Didn't end up happening for him, so shout out to Canoga Park. I know that's a team that really wants to win.
They're on the rise. They got a lot of young guys.
Absolutely. That's a team that's kind of up and coming in that Valley Mission League. I think maybe they take the spot of Reseda in the coming years. Watch out for Canoga. And they gave Roosevelt a good punch. What do you talk about? When the talent comes to play, Roosevelt doing a really good job coming. I think it was the 9 seed. 7 seed or the 9 seed? 7 seed coming out for Roosevelt, doing a really good job, and here they are in the final game.
And I heard through the grapevine, the star running back who we've talked about on this show, Frankie Cruz, he unfortunately tore his ACL in this playoff run, so they're doing this all without him. And we know that they don't like to throw the ball too often. They have a little bit these playoffs, but it's been next man up for the Rough Riders. Got a first-year coach. I don't think they are exceeding expectations, and you got to give them a lot of credit. That rushing style, it's working.
Yeah, now they get a good Locke team who shut down a good offense against Franklin.
Yes.
We're going to get to our pick here in a minute, but that's a really good offense. We glowed about Alfred Bobadilla. He's still going to be a really good quarterback next year, but shout out to Locke. They shut him down, and now they kind of get a different style of offensive play here in Roosevelt, a team that's just going to run the ball 40 or 50 times when they can. That's going to be a fun game.
In Division III, Santee continues to roll. Big win for them over Manual Arts, 48-19. Santee the 1 seed, Manual Arts the 5, and no pass attempts from Santee. That's kind of par for the course for them, when you can run it so well. Andre Herrera, Joseph Todd, and Musen Su combined for 457 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. That's a pretty good night for those guys.
Yeah, I think so. Joseph Todd, we talked about him. He was the biggest reason why we were unanimous supporters of Santee coming into Division III, and he had 226 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. So no surprise.
Kick really far too, so that'll add to that total. Incredible.
Yeah,
him.
No real surprise. I mean, the Santee Falcons we thought were probably the best team here in Division III, and they're going to get a really good team, at least a team that's hot. Maybe not the team that we expected to be here, but a team that's really running really well right now. But Santee 48-19 over Manual Arts, another team that was a good Division III opponent. Their Falcons are looking real good.
And Manual Arts had already played Santee. Santee won that game, so we thought maybe you see a team again. It could be tough, but no, Santee rolled right over them. And yeah, like we said, Narbonne was the consensus in the open division, Santee in Division III, and we had some thoughts about the other divisions who was going to make it, but I think Narbonne and Santee were the biggest favorites in their respective divisions, and they're showing us why.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this team, I don't want to count out Fremont, who we're going to talk about here in a second. I don't want to count them out. They got a puncher's chance. You're in the Division III title game. You have a chance to go home a winner. You got a chance to take home a trophy. But when you're running the ball all over a team that knows you're going to run the football, they look at a team and they say, you're not going to throw. We're going to stack the box. We're going to try to come after you. If you can still open up holes and put up 500 yards on the ground, oh boy, you're going to be a tough team.
You mentioned Fremont, Alex. They were the 3 seed. They went on the road. Showed up a little late, I heard, but the game went on, and they beat Chatsworth, the 2 seed, 27-15. Couldn't really find too many stats from this one, but the captains for Fremont, Terrell Smith and Jaden Amos-Hollis, I bet those two have big games, big senior and junior leaders for that team. Can Fremont stop the run? That's the question.
That is the huge question, but you know what? Chatsworth went for the onside kick in the opening kickoff. I got to respect that. I got to shut them out for that.
Good guts.
You got to go for it, but it didn't happen. Fremont recovers, and as I mentioned, they grabbed a 7-0 lead and then had a 14-7 lead at half and just kind of held on to it, winning 27-15. Can they stop the run? We'll see. They haven't been tested against a running back quite like Joseph Todd this season. They're hot. They're motivated. They gave us some love on Twitter and some Instagram hate. I mean, they definitely wanted to be picked, as they should.
It's a free country.
Exactly. When we get you wrong, please feel free to come at us, and they did. And I think Fremont, they're going to be real hot, real boiled up to get after this team.
Yeah, Keith DeMolder, our guy Keith, who does the Best of the Rest videos, he will be at that Division III game. So if you see him, go over and say hello. Alex, let's make some picks. Let's start in D3. Why not? So Santee against Fremont. I think we've tipped this one a bit. Santee is our overwhelming favorite. Any way they slip up here?
Well, I think they might slow down. I don't necessarily think they slip up. I'm sorry, guys, at Fremont. I know you want to get that love, and I think you're a good enough team to beat them. But Santee, if Joseph Todd's not working, they got a bunch of other guys that still are. And I think this is going to be too much of a rushing attack here for Fremont to slow down. Too overwhelming. Even if they put up 350 yards, Fremont's going to have to match that on offense. I just don't see them putting together a complete enough game to beat this team.
I have Santee as well. If you haven't already, check out Eric Sondheimer's piece in the LA Times on Joseph Todd. He works really hard, not just in the football field. He also has a job. He got to support his family a little bit. It's a great story, so check that out. I think Todd leads his team to a victory. I have Santee. In Division II, Locke and Roosevelt. Are we going to pick against Locke again for the millionth time? How do you see this one going down?
I think I will, just because Roosevelt. I have talked about this team. I picked them early. You were a denier. I was a believer. I think this team is going to be really good in these next coming years. You mentioned that new coach, kind of a program getting back to what they used to be. They're going to run the football. And as we talked about, one-dimensional teams, a little bit easier to stop. But when you have athletes, I think it's going to be tough. This game is going to be so close, maybe a 28-27 game, maybe 18-17. But I think the Rough Riders squeaked this one out.
I'm still in denial. I have Locke. If you go to Franklin, the #1 team in Division II, and get a win, that's enough for me to pick you to be the D2 champion. I think it's going to be Locke. They don't have a lot of depth, but the guys who are playing are quick. The offense is great. And if they got the big tight end Harvey catching passes in the championship,
he's a tough guy to defend.
I will be a very happy man. I like Locke. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Cruz injury a little bit. If he was playing and I knew their rushing attack was full strength, then I might feel differently. But give me Locke in this game. They've proven that they can not only compete in Division II, but they can win the whole thing. In Division I, Dorsey, one of the hottest teams in the city, and then San Pedro, a team who just kind of, it's really been working out for him in these playoffs a little bit. How do you see that one going?
Well, I just saw Dorsey shut down Scott Harris, who was one of the hot quarterbacks here in the city section, a good Fairfax team. Now they get Justin Bernal, who we thought was a difference maker in some of these games. Dorsey already knows how to shut down a hot quarterback. They know how to contain a good pass attack, and they run the ball really, really well. They got a good stable of backs. I got Dorsey by a score.
I have Dorsey as well. Nothing against San Pedro, but I just think Dorsey, some of these athletes you mentioned.
Very good guys,
the guys on defense who are so good. they're going to have a good opportunity to stop some of these really talented San Pedro offensive players, because San Pedro does have a lot of great players on offense, but I'm not sure if that San Pedro defense can stop Keyshawn Johnson and Dorsey's high-powered rushing attack. I had Fairfax win it all in D1. Dorsey knocked them out, so I'm going to try to stick with the team that knocked out my champion. Give me Dorsey. Let's move to open now. Narbonne against Garfield. Narbonne number 1, Garfield number 6. I have a whole spiel I want to get to. So before that, Alex, what do you think?
Well, let's just make this one easy. It's going to be Narbonne, I think, by several touchdowns. I know Garfield's going to do what they can to keep it close. Narbonne, the depth of talent and the athletes that they have are going to make this a very difficult test. They already beat Birmingham, who we thought was the second or third best team in the city, by 40 points. I think Garfield's not quite as good as Birmingham. I don't see this one being very close.
Yeah, and I understand a lot of the Garfield people after the game were saying, you should have picked us, you disrespected us, and we did last week. But don't take this week and this Narbonne pick as disrespect, because if it was San Pedro in the championship,
yeah,
if it was
it
San
would be a
Fernando
lot different.
In the championship, if it was Birmingham in the championship, we would say the same thing about how good Narbonne is and about how they're going to roll to another Open Division championship.
Yeah,
this isn't a Garfield thing, it's a Narbonne thing. So I want to get that out of the way. And I agree with you. Birmingham gave him a good test. I don't totally believe Garfield will be able to do that. And the final point I want to make on this game. Last year, Crenshaw had one of the best city teams in a long time. They had a lot of Division I guys. They had Amir Crowder, a guy who went to Washington State. A couple guys go to Nevada. Isaiah Johnson was a really good quarterback for them. Solomon Hassan was a great running back. Those two transferred in from LA High. Legitimate, big-time college prospects. You look at Garfield this year, and there are some guys who I firmly believe can play in college, and they have some prospects as well, but they just don't have the same number of guys that Crenshaw had a year ago. Crenshaw went on to win a state championship. The team was really good, and Narbonne running clocked them last year. We don't think Garfield's quite as good as Birmingham. I don't think they're quite as good as that state championship team from Crenshaw a year ago, and so I just don't think it's going to be close. We're going to see running clock in the second half. Again, I think this would be the case for any team. Narbonne running clocked Birmingham, even though Birmingham's offense had a little bit of success. This game kind of just has disaster written all over it for whoever the opponent was going to be. It's going to be a running clock game, and it's just too bad that that's how it works in the city, because everyone likes competitive football, and that's just not what's going to happen on a Friday night.
Yeah, every team that I talk to say, we want Narbonne. We want to give them our best punch, and I got to respect it, but let's be honest. When you said it's not a Garfield thing, it's a Narbonne thing, truer words have not been spoken about City Section. It's no disrespect to you. It's just true honesty. Narbonne just has too many dudes. They got too many dudes. You don't have the same depth of talent. So the truth is, you may have 1 or 2 guys on your whole team that starts at Narbonne. And that's no disrespect. I know the guys on some of these teams are really, really good football players. But the fact of the matter is, Narbonne just has so many guys, top to bottom. There are 11 guys on one side of the ball. Their 22 starters are really, really good football players. But beyond that, they just have more dudes as a depth position. They got 3 guys that could come off the bench and probably start at a lot of other city programs. So Garfield, you got a great shot. If you could knock them off, it would be one of the greatest stories ever told here in the City Section. It would be the smallest David against the biggest Goliath we've seen in a really long time. I don't see it happening, but you know what? We've talked about Garfield having a lot left to play for. Regardless of how this game ends, they should feel really good about how their season went.
Yeah, they'll get one more game no matter what, and if you win that, look at Crenshaw last year, you can win a state championship.
Yeah, come on with a big old trophy.
And you can't let that city loss derail you, and that's what Crenshaw didn't let happen last year. And if I'm Garfield, I'd try to do the same exact thing. Focus on Narbonne, obviously, but then, in the second half of that game, I'm sure Narbonne will be resting some guys, and you just don't want to get people hurt. Go on to that next game, try to win that, and then get a state championship. That would be my advice for Garfield. For Alex Carr, I'm Connor Morrison. Check out our post-championship, post-football video, where we'll have a bunch of awards coming up in the next few weeks. Can't wait to kind of break down the numbers with you, Alex, and see who deserves to be on the All-City team. It's a really tough process, so we'll do our best, and I'm sure a lot of people have some thoughts on that. We'll get that out as soon as this season ends. So I'm Connor, he's Alex. We'll see you next time.